Most Australians think they have one credit score. In practice, you can have more than one, and a bill of $150 can end up on a credit file for years, even after you pay it off. I went through the regulator pages and bureau data for this one. MoneySmart says, your score sits between 0 and either 1,000 or 1,200 depending on the agency. The OAIC says Part II of the Privacy Act 1988 regulates consumer credit reporting in Australia. Equifax reported the national average score at 864 in 2025, still in the excellent range. And from 10 June 2025, Buy Now Pay Later providers had to move under credit law and licensing rules. So this is not some vague background number, it is a real system, and it reaches further than most people think. Subscribe for more Australian money explainers built from source documents, because the next layer is the part most people never check. Say you are 26, earning $72,000, renting, using 2 Buy Now Pay Later accounts and a credit card, and planning to apply for a first home loan in a few years. The first thing to know is that you're not dealing with one file. MoneySmart now says there are 2 main credit reporting bodies because the market changed, but for most viewers, the practical move is still to check Equifax, Experian, and Illion as separate places your data can sit. That is the first trap here, really. People think they are checking the system. A lot of the time, they are checking one corner of it. That matters before a lender has even looked at your income. Equifax uses a range from 0 to 1,200. Experian uses 0 to 1,000. Illion also uses a 0 to 1,000 scale, but its labels differ again. Think of it as 3 scoreboards on different walls, all measuring the same person with different dials. Same person, different wall, different readout. Say that same renter sees a score of 700 on one report on Equifax that sits in the good range. On another bureau, the same number is not telling the same story because the scale itself is different. That is why checking one app or one score is not the same as knowing what a lender may see. And honestly, this is where a lot of the confusion starts. The number feels precise, but out of context, it can be weirdly misleading. The file itself is broader than most people assume. The OAIC says it can include credit inquiries, account types, credit limits, opening and closing dates, repayment history, hardship information, defaults, court judgments, bankruptcy, debt agreements, and serious credit infringements. What it does not mainly show is your income or savings. So when a lender prices risk, it is looking first at your credit behavior, not at the story you tell yourself about being generally responsible. That sounds harsh, but that is basically what the file is built to do. So your file can already look different, depending on which bureau a lender checked. The real damage starts when something goes wrong on one of those files, because the penalty is out of proportion to the mistake. The OAIC says a default can be listed once a debt reaches $150 and is at least 60 days overdue. Before that happens, the credit provider has to send a first notice, then a second notice at least 30 days later, and then wait at least another 14 days before listing the default. Once that listing lands, the clock is long. The OAIC table says a default stays on your report for 5 years. The 5-year period runs from the listing, not from the day you finally pay. MoneySmart is blunt on the outcome, using the phrase even after you've paid them off. And this was the part that really got me. A debt of $150 can follow you for 5 years from the listing date, even after you pay it. And the smaller marks matter too. The OAIC says you are considered to have missed a payment if you make it more than 14 days after the due date. For that 26-year-old renter, this is where the picture changes. What looked like casual finance can already include repayment history, credit limits, old applications, hardship information, and any default that slipped through. If you're finding this useful, subscribe, because the next change pulled Buy Now Pay Later into the same system and made thin files even more expensive to misunderstand. Australia did not always work like this. ARCA says that until 2014, the system only shared negative information. Then comprehensive credit reporting allowed positive data like account details, limits, and repayment history to be reported as well. Picture the old system as a file that only recorded mistakes. The new system is a wider ledger that records the account, the limit, and whether the payment arrived. That shift matters a lot. That wider ledger matters more after the rule change in 2025. ASIC says that from 10 June 2025, Buy Now Pay Later providers need a credit license that authorizes them to act as credit providers. Afterpay says from June 10, 2025, will conduct credit checks for new customer applications. At the same time, Afterpay says it does not currently report repayment history or spend limit to credit reporting bureaus. So the same renter who thought Afterpay was separate from Mortgage Life may already have hard inquiries sitting on a file they have never opened. That is the kind of thing people miss because the product feels casual. The file does not care whether it felt casual. That matters because the file is not just about approval, it can change price. ANZ says personal loan applicants get a personalised interest rate based on their credit score. ANZ also says it uses the Equifax score for that decision. In simple terms, the better the file, the cheaper the debt can be. The weaker the file, the more likely you are pushed toward the top end of the range or out of the best offers altogether. So this is not just yes or no, it is what it costs. MoneySmart also says applications for credit cards, home loans, personal loans, and business loans stay on your report for 5 years. That means shopping badly can make the file look worse while you're still trying to solve the original problem. 3 full applications in a short period do not look like research. They look like urgency, and lenders are reading that file cold, they do not get your internal monologue. This is where a lot of younger viewers misread their position. Equifax reported a national average score of 864, but Australians aged 18 to 30 averaged 715. The next decade jumped to 839. Equifax says people with little or no credit history can have a thin file, and that can make it harder to qualify for new loan accounts or lead to less favourable rates. So you can be doing nothing obviously wrong and still present as higher risk because the system has less to work with. That is a rough deal, but it is a very real one. That is not an accident of paperwork. The bureaus are private companies, not public record offices, and the data is the product. Australia moved late from a negative-only model to comprehensive reporting, then pushed larger lenders to report more consistently because voluntary adoption was slow. The result is a system built to help lenders price risk more precisely, while consumers are left managing files they often do not know exist. That also tells you what is actually under your control. First, get your free reports. MoneySmart says you have a right to a free copy every 3 months. Check Equifax, Experian, and Illion before you apply for anything serious. Checking your own report is the safe part. Applying for credit is the part that leaves the kind of inquiry lenders can see. Next, stop treating every application as a harmless test, and if cash flow is tight, ask for hardship early, because MoneySmart says a financial hardship arrangement does not affect your credit score, which is much better than letting a small debt roll toward default. Alright, this is the practical bit, slightly boring, very worth doing. Come back to that 26-year-old renter. At the start, they thought they had one vague score somewhere in the background. By this point, they know they may have 3 files, 2 buy now, pay later enquiries, a thinner history than older borrowers, and a 5-year penalty waiting if a bill tips into default. The difference between knowing that and not knowing it is not abstract. It can decide how expensive the next loan is before the application is even assessed. That is the whole thing, really. Same person, same income. Very different position, just because now they can actually see the system they are walking into. If you want more source-backed explainers on the money systems that shape day-to-day life in Australia, subscribe and leave a comment with the topic you want next. Check out one of these videos next. This is general information only, not personal financial advice. Please consider speaking with a licensed financial advisor before making any decisions.